Rubbing color fastness is one of the printing color fastness tests. It refers to the degree of color fading of printed fabrics after friction and evaluates the fabric's resistance to mechanical friction. What are the factors that affect the color fastness to rubbing? Let's analyze 5 key factors. 1. The dry rubbing fastness of rough fabrics is poor. Unfixed dye is the main cause of poor color fastness to rubbing. Under dry conditions, for fabrics with rough surfaces, such as linen, denim fabrics and pigment-printed fabrics, dry rubbing can easily remove dyes, paints or other colored substances accumulated on the surface of the fabric. It causes some colored fibers to break and form colored particles, which reduces the color fastness to dry rubbing. 2. Chemical structure of reactive dyes. When cellulose fiber fabrics dyed with reactive dyes are tested for color fastness to wet rubbing, there are 2 main factors that cause color transfer. One is that water-soluble dyes are transferred to the friction fabric during friction, causing the original color to fade and stain the friction cloth. Second, partially dyed fibers break during friction, forming tiny colored fiber particles that are transferred to the friction fabric, causing staining. Therefore, if the dyeing process is standardized, the pre-treatment is in place and the soaping is sufficient, the digital printing products made of reactive digital printing ink will have better color fastness and hand feel. 3. Degree of dyeing color depth. The color fastness to wet rubbing of fabrics dyed with reactive dyes is closely related to the depth of dyeing, showing a good linear relationship among them. Dye supersaturation is the most important factor. Excessive dye cannot be combined with fibers and will accumulate on the surface of the fabric to form floating colors, seriously affecting the color fastness to wet rubbing. In addition, cotton fibers without special treatment will swell under wet conditions, increase friction, and decrease fiber strength. These create good conditions for the breakage, shedding, and color transfer of colored fibers. Therefore, proper pre-treatment of cellulose fibers before digital printing, such as mercerization, singeing, cellulase polishing treatment, scouring, bleaching, washing, and drying, can improve the surface finish and wool effect of the fabric and reduce friction, resistance, and reduce floating color, thus effectively improving the fabric's color fastness to wet rubbing. 4. Fabric structure. The color fastness of most dark-colored products to wet rubbing is better than that to dry rubbing, such as black, red, and navy blue. This is because the fibers have extremely low hygroscopicity or the water swelling effect is not obvious, and the presence of water acts as a lubricant. Of course, for fabrics such as corduroy, twill, and pigment printing, under wet conditions, due to the dyes and printing and dyeing processes used, the color fastness to wet rubbing is usually level 2, or even lower. 5. Softener. Improve the color fastness of reactive dye printing through soft finishing. Softeners have a lubricating effect and reduce the coefficient of friction, thus preventing the dye from coming off. Cationic softeners can also form lakes with anionic dyes, making the dyes less likely to fall off. At the same time, the lake reduces the solubility of the dye and improves the wet rubbing fastness. However, softeners with hydrophilic groups are not conducive to improving wet rubbing fastness. In the production process, fixatives can be used to block the water-soluble groups of dyes, control the pH value of the finished cloth, remove floating colors, improve the smoothness of the fabric, and thereby improve the wet rubbing fastness of the fabric. Proper pre-baking can avoid dye migration. Factors that need attention include the amount of alkali agent, steaming time, washing method, sufficient soaping, etc. The first 2 are closely related to the degree of hydrolysis of the dye, and the latter 2 are directly related to the floating color of the dye. Optimizing color fastness in reactive digital printing requires a reasonable fabric pre-treatment process, high-quality reactive digital printing ink. The ink volume must be within the range that the fabric can bear, as well as reasonable steaming and sufficient washing and soaping. Softeners and fixatives can be added if necessary.